What's up guys, Roddy here, and it's time for the review I said I wasn't gonna do, but I'm gonna do it anyway. It's a 1 month review of this guy, the brand new OnePlus 12. So let's go. So in true form and fashion of the channel, make sure you jump down there and you hit that subscribe button if you've already done that. You are awesome. And today we are going to talk about the OnePlus 12, the so-called flagship killer. We're gonna talk about what it's been like to use this thing for 1 month in my pocket as my main phone with my main SIM in it. So let's jump right into it. First things first, we have to talk about this design. So I went with the all black version of this device. The reason why is I typically put a case on my phone, didn't want to get the green because that's all you can get in the US is either black or green. You can't get the white one. So I went with the black one. I usually run a skin, I usually run a case, and black just seems to really go over real well whenever you're doing those sort of things because you typically get a black camera bump, and that kind of goes with everything. So for me, this was kind of the one to go with. So I really like it in black for one main reason, and that is the back of this phone. If you can't tell, the textured finish on this is one of the best feeling textures that I've seen on a modern day smartphone, but they give you even more texture here. And to me, it gives it a good enough feel in the hand that you probably don't have to rock a case on this, because to me, this version, the black version, feels really, really good and grippy in the hand. It's almost like it's got some kind of skin or something on it. It gives you something really good and firm to hold on to. Doesn't feel like it's gonna slip out of your hands, if I'm tossing it around or whatever. It's got a good texture to it. Now I've heard that the green one feels really, really slippery, like it's gonna slide out of your hand. Maybe they've got two different kind of textures on them, not really sure. But for me, this one has felt really, really good. Also, I don't like cameras being shoved off into a corner, and these aren't completely shoved into a corner, but they do have this massive ring around them. I do kind of like how the frame molds into that, but you do ever so slightly on the tops and bottoms, just right where it meets the side, because they went so thin with this phone. It does kind of have a little bit of a ledge there that you can kind of feel that. It's never bothered me. I've never noticed it. I typically hold my phone like this or like this, so it doesn't bother me at all. And these cameras aren't completely shoved into the corner because of this design. So this round little spot kind of gives you somewhere to rest your finger if you're talking on the phone or if you're holding it in your hand. Gives you just a little bit more confidence when holding it. I still think that Pixel has probably my favorite camera bar, bump, visor, whatever you want to call it nowadays. But this to me is probably second best. I would prefer this over what Apple and Samsung are doing, but Pixel still takes the cake. But by far the best back on a phone that you can find, in my opinion. Flipping it over, great screen here, 6.7 inches, 6.8 roughly, somewhere in there. It's a modern day smartphone. It's over 6.5 inches. It's a big boy. But they've managed to make this feel really thin. And the weight is not super duper heavy. I've heard some people say they felt like that this phone was top heavy, but for me, I don't get that. I mean, it's obviously got more weight on one side or the other because of the cameras, but no different than any other modern day smartphone that I've held. And plus, again, as you can see, my finger naturally rests right there, so it just kind of fits in the palm of your hand really nicely. Also, yes, you do have curved edge screen here, but you've got decent enough side rails that you don't typically have accidental touches if you're just holding this and using two hands. If you were to kind of stretch across like that to try and reach, you might get an accidental press if you're using one-handed, but overall, like just as I'm texting or whatever, I didn't notice anything. It's only whenever I had those like really stretched moments. But I typically, because this phone's large, I'm using two hands to do anything on it. The swipe gestures and all, though, with that curved screen, make it real easy for you just to swipe from one side or the other. And it just, I don't know, it does. It makes it real easy to hold. It doesn't feel super thick and heavy and bulky. It's very comfortable. So overall, I felt like the design was a win here for OnePlus for what they give you. So I'm gonna start with something that you probably wouldn't expect, and that is screen and haptics performance, because typically on a modern day smartphone, you get really good haptics, you get a really good screen, you get really good performance, and then somehow, some way, all of those things don't work together. Here I have to compliment OnePlus for making a phone that has a great, fantastic looking screen, that has great haptics, and then has an operating system and a software that all feel like they're one. What do I mean by that? Well, as I'm texting and typing and swiping and getting notifications and all those things, the haptics, the feedback as I'm texting and typing, the response, all of it, the way it looks, the way it works together, kind of gives you that all-in-one feel instead of it being like separate things. It's like they actually mesh them together versus like being like, oh yeah, it's a great typing experience because the haptics are good, but maybe the animations weren't that great or whatever, or the responses didn't seem to be as accurate as you wanted them to. Here, I didn't get any of that. From notifications to opening apps, opening menus, interacting with the apps, touching the screen, that sort of thing, and the feedback and everything I'm getting from it, it all feels real cohesive, almost like it's all part of the operating system. And I really, really enjoy that. Something that I don't feel like I've gotten in a really long time on a lot of modern day flagships. And I really think that makes a huge difference in being able to enjoy the device. Just that small little thing of, yeah, it's really good haptics. I can really dial them in. I can change the intensity and all that kind of stuff and make it my own, stronger, softer, whatever. But also how it interacts whenever I'm touching the screen and what's giving me that feedback, what's not. Are the animations moving in conjunction with how it should and that sort of thing. It's just been really, really nice, and I've taken a lot of pleasure in using this device. On top of that, there's been other things. The way that the OS animation is, how smooth it is with this display. I mean, you're talking about a display here that is just extremely, extremely sharp, extremely bright, extremely responsive, but it doesn't give you that over sharpening feel. It doesn't give you that oversaturated feel. It's very vibrant, it's very colorful. There's been people complaining about, oh, my screen's not very vibrant, and I would say you don't have something set up right. And maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll do a whole tutorial on how I have my phone set up, because to me, this has been Samsung good, and I always put Samsung screens at the top. So to me, this has been Samsung good when it comes to watching content. And I almost, because I carry this next to my iPhone every single day, because I carry two phones, I almost can't start a video on the iPhone to watch it without putting it down and picking this phone up, finding that video and watching it on here, because that's how good the screen is. And I can't tell you how long it's been since I've actually done that on any device, where I've actually put the iPhone down because I enjoyed the other device so much. That being said, I have to keep going with performance and talk about the battery life adds to that experience of being just a stellar phone. The battery life on this device, not only is it good, but then you have the charging to go along with it, makes it even better. So first off, I get extremely good battery out of this phone, easily pushing 6-7 hour days, maybe even 8 or 9 hour days if I really wanted to push it. The day that I pushed it really, really hard, I was on a 64-mile bike ride. So I was streaming music, I had Strava on, I had Relive on, everything was tracking, and I was no Wi-Fi, straight 5G, on the beach, in the heat, you name it. I was pushing this phone to the limit. Always on display was on, max brightness because we're out in the sun, by the beach. I mean, it was just brutal on this phone. And I ended the day with about 43%. When I say I ended the day, that means I started the day off at about 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, taking this off charge, scrolling, texting, doing stuff on a 2-hour drive to the beach, get to the beach, ride for another 6 hours, and then go to dinner and all the other things. Still had plenty of battery life at the end of the day. Now, granted, that's not a normal day, but even on that bike ride, I'm taking tons of pictures, taking videos, the whole 9 yards. This thing is a beast. But there's a lot of phones that can do that. My S23 Ultra could do that. My 15 Pro Max made it through the end of the day. Granted, I wasn't using all those features on that phone, but it made it to the end of the day, and they have great battery life. Where this phone sets itself apart is when it comes to fast charging and fast wireless charging. If I give this phone any kind of quick charge throughout the day, I've got a 64 watt charger, and plus this comes with an 80 watt charger in the box. If I pop it into either one of those, I'm talking from 43% to full. It took it about, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes at most, 15 minutes, maybe pushing it. That is insane. Even my 64 watt charger, I can plug this thing in, and if it's at like 75%, it's at 100 in just a few minutes. To me, that makes this thing a battery champ, because nowadays being a battery champ is not all about, oh, my battery went the distance. And I know there's plenty of you that are probably destroying your keyboard saying, yeah, but this phone and that phone. One, I'm comparing a phone that I can easily get in the US. I can go on Amazon, I can go on their website, whatever. I can order the phone, it comes here, works on most major carriers, no problem. I'm not talking about phones that are hard for me to get here, or their software is not utilized for this region or whatever. I'm talking about my experience with a phone here in the US. So in the US, this phone, battery champ. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I see a lot of those tests, and yeah, it's great to see, you know, most people say, oh, they're really pushing them to the limit, but actually they're not, because here's my take on that, and this makes the video a little bit longer, but just stick with me. So most of those tests are on Wi-Fi. Phones run more efficient on Wi-Fi. It's a less power draining thing. When you start getting out and about, you're running around town, you're in the city, you're doing whatever you're doing, maybe you're in and out of service, or you're on 5G and you're using this really fast connected service that's over different bandwidths and different whatever, going from one tower to the next. That plus streaming, plus texting and typing and notifications and getting them different times or whatever, that all goes into the battery drain of your phone way harder in a real world setting than it is on a desk, on controlled Wi-Fi, just running videos, running cameras, whatever. You don't use your phone like that, and to me, that is not an accurate example of how these phones run. Not defending the phone, because this phone still does amazing in those categories and typically is running neck and neck and just maybe a minute or two off of some of the others. But again, a lot of it has to do with the software and how it computes and how it does things. And in those settings, one phone may do really, really well. To me, I want a phone that I know is performing well out day to day in real life scenarios, not one that's in a controlled environment that's using Wi-Fi. This phone on Wi-Fi would probably last 3 days with a regular day usage, just saying. So for me, the battery life is probably one of my favorite things of why I use this, but really and truthfully, as a power user, I'm always looking at what phone is going to give me that experience when I'm demanding a lot out of a device like this. And so for me, the demand here is pretty great. So I'm typically jumping in and out of anywhere from 5 to 6 emails a day. I'm getting probably 3,000 to 5,000 notifications a day. I'm texting multiple people. I'm on multiple different texting platforms. Right now, like, my phone's blowing up because I'm a social media manager and accounts start getting really busy around this time of the day. So you get lots of notifications. You get lots of people coming to comment on stuff and this, that, and the other. And I like to keep up with everything. And this thing it's vibrating all the time. Maybe it's making a noise. Maybe the notification's popping up. It's on Bluetooth because it's connected to a smartwatch. You name all these things. And when you're demanding all this stuff and you've got multiple apps open, you're jumping in and out of stuff, you're doing some light graphic design, you're taking some pictures, you're texting, you're responding to email, you're posting, you're uploading pictures, downloading pictures, uploading video, downloading video. It's a lot to ask for any device that's out there, and most of them do it really, really well. But this one has just felt super solid, a lot like other flagships that are out there. S23 Ultra was super solid. My iPhone 15 Pro Max has been pretty solid. I just don't see this phone slugging or lagging or not being able to keep up with the competition. If anything, it's at the top right there with all of these other flagships. And to top it all off, I've enjoyed the OS on here. I mean, it's been really, really good. It's not for everyone. It's a little different than probably what you're used to if you're a Samsung, Google, or an iPhone user. It's just going to be different. If you put iPhone aside and you just focus on Android, it's a little different. What I found was really good was it's got a good mix of kind of that One UI from Samsung, and whenever you go over and you get that Google experience from Pixel. To me, those two worlds kind of meshed here. And that's what ColorOS, I feel like, has given us here. At first, I was a little taken back from it because it was a little different, but then I really learned that this phone gives you a ton of customization. Where Pixel started to kind of box you in because they're giving you like their best version of Pixel. I get it, it's a lot of good things, but when you do certain things and you get used to certain things like the dialer, making phone calls, text message, I use a lot of Google apps anyway, and a lot of that stuff gets baked in here, but then I kind of want some customization because I love something like Nothing's OS, and I loved a little bit of One UI, and then all of the Google stuff that I get from Pixel. Here I found all of that without having to do anything like download a separate launcher or download an app to do these certain customizations. All of this stuff kind of rolled together, gave me such a good experience that it really felt like the best of all worlds here. I could do minimalist type things that I liked on my Nothing phone. I can do Pixel-esque things that I did whenever I had my Pixel Fold and Pixel 8 Pro. I could do some of the things that I did whenever I downloaded GoodLock in One UI, and I did all that natively without having to do anything extra here. Just the amount of customization, the amount of how you can really push this phone to the limit was super, super impressive. So ultimately, minus a few little caveats on the design, because yes, I would love a flatter sides here and no curved screen, and because I like that look. That's a preference thing. I don't fault the phone for it because ultimately I put a case on my phone. This awesome wood case is so far my favorite one. I've had 3 cases so far, but I put a case on my phone and it gave it that kind of squared boxy design, and it was a $10, $20 fix, no big deal. Plus I still get a really nice real wood luxury back feel, so I didn't really miss that either. So for me, it's been spectacular. I haven't put a screen protector on it because the screen has been so good to me. I hated to interrupt that screen with a screen protector. And shocker, I have no scratches or dings or dents or cracks or any of that kind of stuff. So really the last thing we talk about here is the performance of the cameras. And this camera system, quite different than a lot of camera systems that I've used. I'm going to go ahead and give you the end of the video if you want to kind of wrap this up. But the camera system here is really good. It's really solid. It's got a lot of diversity. It reminds me a lot of how Samsung cameras just give you so much. You can just play and do a lot of stuff, and there's a lot of feature-rich stuff here. There's some Hasselblad stuff baked in that's really fun and neat if you're a mobile photographer and you like really artsy looking stuff. But if you're a point and shoot kind of person, I'm going to go ahead and tell you Nothing does. Open it up, point and shoot, trust it, and it's amazing every single time, nearly better than Pixel. If you're a point and shoot person, if you're not going to take time or you don't want to think about it, you just want to pull your phone up and take the picture and move on with your life or whatever, you don't have time to play with settings or learn your phone or go experiment with it or whatever. If you're not that type of person, you just want to open it, use it, and it's good to go. Photos, you go with a Pixel. Video, you go with an iPhone. Diversity, you can choose what you want, because I'm not going to really put any of those over anything, because really and truthfully nowadays any flagship phone that you get has very, very, very good and capable cameras, but a lot of them you have to learn to use them. For me, opening this up and using it, I was blown away with how impressive it was. One of the big things, and I'll throw it up here on the screen, is reds. It's so hard to get a mobile phone that processes and takes pictures of red objects really, really well. This phone does that. I had heard this phone fell apart at nighttime. I went and did a whole separate video, and that's to come, on night photography with this thing. I used everything I could, zooming in and out on videos, pushing this thing to the max, wide, ultra wide, you name it. I tried to shoot anything and everything, every condition, starting from when the sun went down to when it was completely gone, dark alleyways, almost completely dark, all the way to lit up stuff, and you name it. I really pushed this phone to its limits, and it did fantastic. I didn't have really anything that I was like, it's kind of devastating that it couldn't manage to do that. It did really good, and I was really surprised and also very happy because everything else about the phone was so solid and so good and so great that the cameras letting it down would have brought me right back to the same kind of the feeling that I have with Samsung, where the processing falls apart sometimes and it's inconsistent thing. This phone has been super duper consistent. The only thing about the cameras that I can say that I don't like is it's going to be this HDR kind of plus thing that they give you, or the HDR auto is actually what they call it. It's right here. I don't know if you can see that on camera because of the light, but it's a little button when you open up the camera. There's 3 little lines up here. You click those and you can turn that off. And I can probably, I'm sure, go into settings and disable that entirely. I just kind of go set, depending on what kind of setting I'm in, I just pick and choose whether or not I turn that on or off. If it looks really good on the display, I trust it and I go with it, but sometimes some of the colors, or maybe it'll darken the image a little bit more, which could be fixed in a software update, I'm sure, but to me, it's just turning that thing off. And most of the time, 99.9% of the time when I turn that off, I get the picture that I want. So I'm just opening that up, turning it off, and shooting with it. But the processing is really solid, and it's really good. And when you wrap all of this into one big package and you bundle it together, for me, the top tier spec that I could get this device at was $899, and that was for 512 gigabytes of storage and 16 gigabytes of RAM. Great display, fast wireless charging, a charger and a cable in the box. I mean, everything is solid here. And yeah, I mean, there may be parts of this phone that get beat out by other phones out there. There may be parts of this phone that are not as good or the top, but when you combine everything about this phone is good, great, or the best, nothing is bad, nothing is terrible, nothing is a deal breaker, and you bundle all that for $899 and trade in a phone, guys. You trade in any device. You can trade in a tablet, you can trade in a phone, you can trade in a watch, you can trade stuff in on. I paid $300 for this. That's a budget price. And this, to me, is by far not only the best value, but probably one of the best Android phones you can buy. If you're a photographer, it's a great device. If you're a power user, it's a fantastic device. The only person I'd say this phone is not for is, one, if you're dedicated to Apple, in the Apple ecosystem, or you keep a phone for 6 or 7 years, because it doesn't have 6 or 7 years worth of updates promised. That's it. That's the review. That's all there is. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think about the brand new OnePlus 12? Is it a great phone? Do you think it's a flagship killer? Is it the best value? Let me know in those comments. Make sure you hit that like button, and we will see you next time.